Before we do get underway with the actual presentation, just a brief outline of what we'll be covering tonight. We'll have a little bit about election background. We'll talk about why we're here, becoming a candidate. Then what's next after filing your nomination. And then we have plenty of information, additional resources to provide you. And then, as mentioned previously, we'll have a Q&A portion to end the session tonight. Now, without further ado, I'd like to invite Cassandra to come up and take you through the first part of our presentation.
Thank you, Colin. I will now take us through the background. The City Clerk is responsible for the administration of the election and must conduct the election in accordance with the Municipal Elections Act and other related legislation, including City of Toronto bylaws. The responsibilities include establishing forms and policies and procedures, determining, approving the voting places, notifying candidates of their legislative responsibilities, and this is done through a number of channels, including information sessions and communications through our website, email, and when accessing candidate-specific systems, administering the city's contribution rebate program, and making the election accessible for all. Now on to accessible campaigning. The clerk must ensure the election is accessible for both candidates and electors. This includes the accessibility of our voting places and the importance of proving communication through accessible channels and in accessible formats. We strongly encourage candidates to do the same when running their campaigns. For best practices with respect to accessibility, please review the AMCTO Candidate's Guide to Accessible Elections. Okay, so we are now going to walk through the ward structure of the 2026 municipal election for council and Toronto's 4 school boards. The 4 school boards include Toronto District School Board, with 12 trustees, the Toronto Catholic District School Board, again with 12 trustees, Conseil Scolaire Viamonde, 3 trustees, and Conseil Scolaire Catholique Mon Avenir, 2 trustees. The 25 ward boundaries align with current federal and provincial electoral ridings. Each school board aligns with the city's 25 ward structure, although in some cases, or most cases, one school board ward may encompass 2 or more council wards. To see how school board wards correspond to council wards, you can check the 2026 School Boards Reference Chart, linked here, and on the website, or the maps on the following slide. I will now pass it on to Kathleen to discuss changes to school board trustees for TDSB.
Okay, thanks everybody for coming today. So I am first going to just speak about a recent change to legislation surrounding school board trustees. I'm sure many of you heard on the news that on April 13th, the Ontario government passed Ontario Regulation 100/26, which amended the school board structure, or the maximum number of school board trustees in any given board in Ontario, to 12. So that's the cap. Now, the only school board where this regulation impacts is the Toronto District School Board, which previously had 22 wards. It's now down to 12 wards, and I'll show you the new ward map on the next slide. We didn't have it at the previous info session, so this is new information. The regulation also impacted the role of school board trustees. For any questions that you might have specifically on how this change impacts the role, the pay, things like that, we encourage that you either contact the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, or the school board itself. So that's what I'll say about that, and we'll get into what the wards actually look like. So this slide here shows you the 12 new wards that make up the Toronto District School Board. You can see that the school board wards are outlined in yellow. The city wards are outlined in green. So you can see, as Cassandra said, in all cases, one school board ward is made up of 2 or more city wards. So if anybody here is planning on running for Toronto District School Board or any trustee position, please make yourself aware of what city wards constitute which school board wards, because it can get a bit confusing. The numbers don't line up perfectly, so just make sure you know exactly where you're running. When you come in, we'll point to the map and be like, you are running here, and you'll have to basically write down the corresponding city wards, but this helps with any confusion that might come up. The next map here, this is the Toronto Catholic District School Board. There's also 12 wards in the Toronto Catholic District School Board. However, the 12 wards in the Toronto Catholic District School Board are different than the 12 wards in the Toronto District School Board. So that's also something that's confusing to please be aware of. Next, this is Conseil Scolaire Viamonde. This is the French Public School Board. There are 3 wards that make up this school board. Again, it's a little hard to see on the map, but they are outlined in yellow. And finally, the last map that I'm going to show you today, this is Conseil Scolaire Catholique Montavenière. There are 2 wards in this school board. You can see basically the line cuts right down the middle of the city. Okay, moving on from that, let's talk about some key dates that all candidates must be aware of. The most important for you all here today, you're all at a Becoming a Candidate information session, so the most important dates for you to be aware of are when you can file to be a candidate. And this is May 1st, so already ongoing, all the way to August 21st. But please be advised that on August 21st, we only accept nominations between 9 and 2 p.m. So if you show up at 2:05, unless you're already in line, we can't accept your nomination. These are legislated times. They're very strict. Even if we wanted to be lenient, we wouldn't be able to. So please come in before 2 p.m. on the last day. I'm not going to go through the other dates, like you can see it on the screen here. Also, when you become a candidate, we will be pestering you constantly with dates you should be aware of, deadlines to do things, all that stuff. So be aware of when you can become a candidate, be aware of the advance vote dates, be aware of election day, and then obviously when you become a candidate, be aware of the other important dates, but we will provide plenty of support on that front. Okay, so let's get into the reason why you're all here today. How do you actually become a candidate? We'll start with eligibility, which is mainly the same for mayor, councillor, and school board trustees, but there are some little nuances here, so we'll go through them. Before I get into that, though, there's one key rule that we make sure everyone who is thinking about being a candidate has to be aware of. And this is that you cannot start raising and spending money on your campaign until you file your nomination paper. So come in, you can already file your nomination paper, it's past May 1st, come in, file your nomination paper, then you can start campaigning. Now, let's get into the eligibility. In order to file to be a candidate, you must meet the qualifications that are listed on the screen here. For all of the offices, when you file your nomination paper, you must be at least 18 years of age, a Canadian citizen, be able to vote for the office for which you plan to run. So an example that I like to give is if you want to run for a French school board, you have to be eligible to vote for that French school board. So you have to be a French school board supporter. So if that's something that you're confused about, you probably aren't a French school board supporter, but like you could come and ask us, we can look you up. And then finally, the last thing, not be disqualified from holding office. So for an example of why one might be disqualified from holding office is if you are in default from a previous election. meaning you didn't file your financial statement in one of the last by-elections, you would be in default, and that means you're disqualified from holding office until the next general election. If you plan to run for mayor or councillor, you must either reside in the City of Toronto, or you or your spouse must own or lease property in the City of Toronto. If you lease property, it must be in your personal name. So if you own a corporation, it can't be in the corporation's name. It has to be specifically in your name in order for you to be eligible to run. For people who wish to run for school board trustee, it's slightly different. So you must live in the area of jurisdiction of that particular school board. Now, if you run for the Toronto District School Board or the Toronto Catholic District School Board, that jurisdiction is the City of Toronto itself, it's the borders. Now, for the two French school boards, the border of the jurisdiction, the border of the school board actually extends beyond the City of Toronto. So in those particular cases, in some cases, you can live outside of Toronto. Now, another thing that I'm going to highlight here is that if you are a City of Toronto employee and you want to run for mayor or councillor, you must take an unpaid leave of absence prior to filing your nomination. Now, the same applies for school board trustees, but in this case, if you are an employee of a school board, you have to take an unpaid leave of absence before filing a nomination for school board trustee. And this includes even things like if you're a substitute teacher, things like that, you have to take an unpaid leave of absence if you want to run for school board trustee. Okay, so now we are going to get into how do you actually file your nomination, what do you have to bring, what are we going to be looking for, things like that. So we're already in the nomination period, which began on May 1st. And so as of today, you are able to come to the Toronto Elections Office to file your paperwork. All potential candidates will need a nomination paper, your current ID that shows your name, signature, and qualifying address. So a great example of a piece of ID that has all those pieces of information is your driver's license. If you don't have a driver's license, or you don't have a piece of ID that has all three things on it, you can use two pieces of ID that have one has name and signature, one has name and address. There's a list of acceptable ID on our website, so feel free to take a look at that, and we'll figure out something that works for us in order to prove those three things. And you also have to have a method of paying the nomination fee, which for mayor candidates, the filing fee is $200, and for councillor and trustee candidates, the fee is $100. The fee can be paid in cash, by debit card, by credit card, by certified check, by bank draft, which would be payable to the Treasurer, City of Toronto. The one thing, be aware, we do not accept personal checks, okay? So don't bring in a personal check, pay with any of the other methods, and you'll be good to go. And then finally, I just want to highlight for those of you here that want to run for mayor or councillor, you must also provide 25 original endorsements of nomination. Again, these have to be original, wet signature endorsements on the prescribed form. We won't accept scans. We won't accept incomplete endorsements. It's one of the easiest mistakes that prospective candidates make is when they provide their endorsements, they're missing things like the date, they're missing things like postal code, they're not fully complete. So we advise every single candidate who's thinking of running for mayor councillor to get more than 25 endorsements in case we have to disqualify some, and to carefully check their endorsements before they come in, because we can't be lenient here either. We check all the endorsements for completeness. So this will save you time in the long run also if you do this. Once your nomination is accepted, you will immediately be a candidate, and you'll receive an email from candidateinfo@toronto.ca that contains a bunch of important documents for your campaign, some being your preliminary spending limits, your preliminary self-contribution limits, a letter to help you open up a bank account. That's the first thing you have to do if you plan on raising or spending money as a candidate, and also a bunch of legislated policies that are helpful for you. These policies are related to our vote counting equipment, as well as policies around mail-in voting. So that's all included in the email that you get immediately after you file your nomination. Okay, so we have a whole slide here dedicated to endorsements. I know I spoke a little bit about it before, but really this is one of the key things that we look at when anyone comes in to file their nomination for mayor councillor. As I mentioned, you need to get at least 25 endorsements of nominations. We have a prescribed form that they need to be on. It's currently on our website. Floating out there, we've noticed that there are some old versions of this form, so please make sure you have the current version. In the header, it says the 2026 municipal election, so that's like a very easy indicator that you have the right form, and that just helps everyone out in the long run. A few things I'll say about the people who can endorse you. So only eligible electors within the City of Toronto can endorse you. So people who would be able to vote in this election. It doesn't have to be in your specific ward, but it has to be eligible to vote as a whole in the City of Toronto. Only they can endorse you. As I mentioned, it has to be original signatures, wet, so no scans. It has to be, we check for those things. And a good indicator of whether or not someone actually lives in the City of Toronto is they have to have an M postal code. That's kind of what we look for. So that's a good trick for you guys as well. I'll also say that one elector is able to endorse multiple candidates, so that's something to be aware of as well. All these forms are currently available on our website, so you can pick them up there. We also brought a few with us today if you need to pick some up at this info session. I'll also mention that school board trustee candidates do not need endorsements, so don't worry about that if you're planning on running for school board trustee. Yes, and just please check your endorsements. We don't want to have to turn you away and send you out into the square to get more. It really, we don't like doing it, but we have to do it. Okay, moving on. Now we're going to talk about withdrawing your nomination. So let's say you filed your nomination for one office. A few weeks later, you decided you no longer want to run. You have until 2 p.m. on August 21st, so that's the end of the nomination period, in order to withdraw from office. And all withdrawals must be done in person at our Toronto Elections Office. For those who want to withdraw from one office and refile for a different ward or office, you have, again, until 2 p.m. on August 21st to do so. You must withdraw from the old office and then file a new nomination for the new office and pay, again, the appropriate nomination fee for that office. If you are just changing wards, so say, for example, previously you wanted to run for Councillor Ward 1, and then you change your mind and you decide, okay, actually I want to run for Councillor Ward 2, you are not required to get additional endorsements. They can be transferred from your one ward to the other ward. However, if you were previously running, for example, for school board trustee, which didn't require you to get endorsements, if you want to then change to a councillor position, you will have to bring along those 25 endorsements in order to refile. Now, for those who filed for more than one office, you must remember that each campaign is separate, and your contributions and expenses cannot be transferred from one campaign to another. So if you collected contributions for one campaign, you cannot use that money on your new campaign for the new ward. You are also required to submit a financial statement for each of your campaigns if you change offices. Okay, now let's get to the final bit of my speaking. Where do you file your nomination? So you're all here at City Hall, so you know how to find the building. Now, where's our office? You have to file your nomination at our Toronto elections office here at City Hall. For those who ran in 2022, this is our office is actually located in a slightly different location of the building. We're still on the first floor, and we're still on the west side of the building, but it's, again, slightly different. The easiest way that we tell people to, the easiest thing that we tell people to do is when you enter City Hall from the front, immediately turn left and go through those security, that security checkpoint immediately to your left. Don't keep on going forward, just turn left immediately, continue down that hallway, which has like marriage licenses, registry services, liquor licenses, and you'll see signs, and then turn and you'll see our office. It's relatively straightforward. If you're having difficulty, give us a call, we can help you out. Our office is open from 8:30 to 4:30, excluding holidays, and as I mentioned, again, I'll keep on drumming this point. On the last day of nominations, we will only be accepting nominations from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Another thing I'll mention is we do have an online booking system, so if you are wedded to a certain time that you want to file your nomination, feel free to book an appointment. However, we do accept walk-ins as well, and at least right now, you probably will get served right away, although we can't guarantee wait times. Towards the end of the nomination period, it might be a bit busier, so wait times might be a bit longer, but we are happy to serve you. Okay, so let me check to make sure I've covered everything. Yep, that's it for me, so I'm going to pass it over to Christopher, and he is going to talk a little bit about what happens now that you've actually filed your nomination.
All right, hello everyone. Okay, so this is becoming a candidate info session, but I do want to touch on a few things that you should be aware of and kind of turn your attention to after you file your nomination. So the first of those things is opening a bank account. So if you're going to raise or spend any money on your campaign, including just your own, the first thing you should do after filing your nomination paper is open a bank account for your campaign. So under the legislation, all money that goes in or out of your campaign should be going through that campaign bank account. And again, this includes your own money as the candidate. So if you're self-funding your campaign, you're essentially donating to yourself. You're donating from your personal account to your campaign account and spending from there. There's no requirements on the type of bank account that you have to open. It doesn't specify that it has to be a business account or anything like that. It just has to be a bank account exclusively devoted to your campaign. We do make available a letter to banks. It'll be in the email package that you get when you file your nomination. It's also on our website. And this is just to assist you when you go to open the bank account. You should bring your nomination paper and this letter. Some banks know what they're doing. Some banks don't know what they're doing. Some banks think they know what they're doing. And this just helps to make the process a little bit smoother. The second thing is you should just familiarize yourself with the spending limits for your campaign. So every candidate is subject to a general spending limit, which is determined, it's a formula based on the number of electors, eligible electors in the ward you're running for. So again, that email package that you get after filing your nomination will have your preliminary spending limit in it. Make sure you review that. It's obviously very important. It's not something you want to exceed. And then finally, we have a bunch of references and resources that we put on our website and a few other places that really give you a good overview on what you should know, how to run a campaign. So again, our website has a bunch of stuff: becoming a candidate, managing a campaign, financial filing afterwards. We have tons of information there. But also, we also link to the province who sets the actual legislation that governs municipal elections in Ontario. They put out a candidate's guide every election. And it basically takes the legislation and puts it in a really plain language, easy to follow package. And we really, really recommend you read that guide. It really takes you from beginning of a campaign to the end of the campaign and really makes it easy to follow and know what you need to do. I also want to briefly touch on some of the contribution rules and limits to keep in mind when running your campaign. So first, as a candidate, you can only accept contributions from individuals normally resident in Ontario. And you can only accept money from individuals. You can't accept them from businesses, corporations, trade unions, any other group or organization. It has to be from individuals. There's also limits on how much money an individual can contribute to you as a candidate. So the maximum that any individual can give to a candidate for mayor is $2,500 in total. The maximum that an individual can give to a candidate for counselor or trustee is $1,200 in total. And then if an individual wants to donate to multiple candidates running for an office, so say they really like a candidate running for counselor Ward 2, Ward 5, Ward 7, the maximum total amount that they contribute to multiple candidates running for an office is $5,000. And candidates, there are also limits for how much candidates for mayor and counselor and their spouses can contribute to their own campaigns. So obviously this limit is higher than the limits I've discussed here. Again, when you file your nomination, you get that email package with a number of documents. One of them includes that self-contribution limit, so the maximum amount that you and your spouse combined can contribute to your own campaign. And this only applies to mayor or councilor candidates. Trustee candidates are not subject to that self-contribution limit. I'm just going to really briefly cover the contribution rebate program, mostly just to make you aware of it as something that exists. So basically, the contribution rebate program is a program that the city runs that allows contributors to candidates who choose to participate to receive a portion of their contribution back after the election. So only mayor and councilor candidates are eligible to participate in the rebate program, and only monetary contributions, so not goods and services contributions, but monetary contributions over $25 in total are eligible for a rebate. So if you're a candidate for mayor or councilor and you are interested in participating, you do have to opt in, and there's extra requirements that you have to fulfill as a candidate. So one of those things is you have to, when you file your financial statement after the election, you have to submit an auditor's report with that financial statement. And also you have to give us copies of all of your expense invoices when you file that financial statement. And just an FYI, so the rebates that an individual who makes a contribution gets is based on all of the contributions they make to all candidates who are participating in the rebate program. So a candidate might be making a contribution to you, but they might be making contributions to 4 other candidates, and their rebate amount is based on all of those contributions applied. So there's a formula. The more money that you can contribute in total, the less, like the lower proportion you get back. So it's just something to be aware of, especially if you're saying, oh, if you donate $100 to my campaign, you get 75% of it back. That's true if they only donate to your campaign. But say they donate $100 to your campaign, but $1,000 to another campaign, it's actually going to be a lower percentage that they get back because the rebate is based on them donating $1,100 in total. Whoa, what have I done? Sorry about that. I don't even know what happened there. Let me jump forward again. Oh, I went too far. All right, here we go. I don't even know what happened. I don't think I touched anything. Additional information and resources before we get to the question and answer period. So one thing, I want to touch on briefly is third-party advertising. So third-party advertising in general is a framework in the legislation introduced in 2018 about, as you might expect, third parties who want to participate in the election process by promoting or opposing candidates. So basically, if a person, a corporation, or a trade union intends to spend money to promote or oppose a candidate, they have to register with the city clerk as a third-party advertiser. That registration period opened on the same day that nominations opened, but it goes all the way up to the Friday before Election Day, which is October 23rd. To register, that third party has to file a notice of registration with the clerk. The thing that I want to draw your attention to as candidates or potential candidates is candidates may not be affiliated with or direct a third-party advertiser. So even if a third-party advertiser registers to promote you, promote your campaign, you cannot be affiliated with them, you cannot direct them. And if you want more information on third-party advertising, go to our website. There's lots of great information there. Some resources, I mentioned them already. So there's our website, which again, lots of good stuff there. The official candidates guide, that's the one the province puts out that I mentioned. It's linked to here, it's linked to on our website in the resources section. Really, 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 really recommend that you read that. Excellent. And then the legislation itself, if you just want to go straight to the source for some weird reason, you can do so. The Municipal Elections Act is the legislation that, again, provincial legislation governs how every municipality on Ontario has to run their municipal election. So there's a lot of stuff that we do that is like we don't have a lot of choice in. It's how it's legislated. And so certain things where it's like someone, as Kathleen mentions, arrives at 2:05 instead of 2 p.m., we don't have the flexibility to say, yeah, no problem, don't worry about it. A lot of these things are really set in stone by the legislation. Future information sessions. So we've got 2 of them coming up in the future, really about managing a campaign. I've talked about things like spending limits. I've talked about things like contribution limits. I've talked about finance. I've talked about contribution rebate program. We go into that stuff in a lot more depth in the manage a campaign sessions. So there's one in July and one in August to kind of capture the full breadth of people who file, say around now or through June, but also the people after the end of the filing deadline, so we capture them too. These sessions will be by and large identical, so you're not going to glean extra information by attending both. They'll cover the same ground. And finally, just some ways that you can get in touch with them. We make ourselves very available, so you can get in touch with us in person, come to our elections counter. Again, we're staffed from 8:30 to 4:30, Monday to Friday. We have a devoted candidate phone number. So this is a phone number that rings the people you see here. So you will be answering your questions. It's the people who know about candidate stuff. And similarly, we have a candidate email inbox. So again, it goes to us who know about the candidate related issues. And again, you can get in touch with us directly. So we're going to answer questions about becoming a candidate, rules and requirements, assistance with some of the systems we provide, like My Campaign and the electronic financial filing system. What we don't do, though, is provide interpretation of legislation or campaign advice. So if you're asking us to say, well, is this a valid thing? Or if I do this, is this allowed? As soon as it gets into gray area that's not cut and dry in the legislation, we'll tell you what the legislation says related to it, but we're not going to interpret or give you an answer of like, therefore, yes, you can do this, or therefore, no, you can't do that. It's up to you as the candidate to make those determinations based on what the legislation says and the information that we provide. But we're not going to give you those yes or no answers, and we may tell you in those scenarios that if you want that kind of answer, you might need to seek your own legal counsel. And that's basically it for us. So again, I mean, I have a sneaking suspicion this is becoming a candidate info session, that we're going to get some stuff that's more on managing a campaign. We'll answer all of that stuff. We're going to kind of go back and forth between taking questions from people in the room here, but also we have quite a number of people attending virtually in the webinar format. So we'll kind of go back and forth, question here, question there, and try to get to quite a few of the questions. And